Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well, and peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the Northern Army, the North American Army, the United States military, all branches, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, etc., etc., and will drive him into a land barren and desolate. That Middle Eastern region, more specifically Saudi Arabia, which has been the main staging ground for a lot of wars that the United States waged in that Middle Eastern region, with his face toward the East Sea. And when we go to a map of the Middle East, you see Saudi Arabia right here, which the U.S. had a military presence in. And to the east, you've got the Persian Gulf. And above the Persian Gulf is Iran, which is not just the main target of the United States of America in the Middle East, but also the main target of the state of Israel as well. And to the northeast, you have Iraq, which the U.S. also has a military presence in, with the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And his hinder part, or behind him, toward the utmost sea, the Red Sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. And it's biblical prophecy for the United States to be tied up in that Middle Eastern region. Hence why you had the first war against Iraq with Desert Storm, the second war in Iraq, and the Syrian civil war, which the U.S. had a heavy hand in. And to an extent, the U.S. has a military presence in Syria. And it's going to be no different when the war against Iran breaks out, which is going to play into the bigger battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is what I'm going to be going into with this video. This is an article from the timesofisrael.com titled, Report in First U.S. Refuelers to Take Part in Major Israeli Drill for Strike on Iran. Collaboration involving Israeli fighter jets and American refuelers seen as message to Iran regarding potential for U.S. assistance in an actual Israeli attack. And it's not going to be a potential for U.S. assistance. It's going to be an inevitability. And that's also a part of biblical prophecy, that the state of Israel is going to draw in not just the United States of America and other NATO nations in on their side against Iran, but that it's also going to draw in nations like Russia and China in on the side of Iran. This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore, hear the counsel of Yahweh that he has taken against Edom. And the biblical Edomites are known today as these so-called white people. The Americans, Europeans, the British, the Russians, the Australians, those in South Africa, etc., etc. And his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. And that least of the flock is talking about those Amalekite Edomites over in the Holy Land right now, calling themselves Israelis. And for the rest of the video, I'll be referring to them as the 1948ers. But as it says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. The state of Israel is going to do something to provoke an attack from Iran or create a false flag situation to justify themselves into going to war against Iran. And it's going to draw out, again, the U.S. and these other Western nations in on the side of Iran, on the side of Israel against Iran. And then it's going to draw out nations like Russia and China and her other allies in on her side. And it's going to play into the bigger battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. And then when we go to Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 45 to 46, it's going to go into more detail on who specifically that least of the flock those 1948ers are going to draw out in on their side. Therefore, hear ye the counsel of Yahweh that he had taken against Babylon, Babylon the Great, Mystery Babylon, the virgin daughter of Babylon in Revelation chapter 17, the United States of America. And when you go to Psalms 137, you can see that the nation of Esau, Edom, is synonymous with that daughter of Babylon, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock, those 1948ers, those Amalekite Edomites, shall draw them out. Again, report in first U.S. Babylonian refuelers to take part in major 1948er least of the flock drill for strike on Iran. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. Verse 46, at the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. And this is going to go ill for the United States of America, as well as the state of Israel as well, because at some point during the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the War of Armageddon, World War III, nuclear missiles will be shot to the ends of the earth. The state of Israel is going to get hit with them, and the United States of America, Babylon, is going to get hit with 200 million nuclear missiles. That's going to turn it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. And not just are nations like Russia, China, Iran going to shoot their nukes onto the U.S., but also the U.S.'s own allies are going to turn against her at some point during World War III, such as Britain, France, Germany, and these other NATO nations that allied themselves with Russia to shoot those nuclear missiles onto her. But that's a topic for another day. What I'm going to be specifically dealing with is that Northern Army being driven down into a land barren and desolate, that Middle Eastern region, due to the least of the flock drawing them out in on their side to go to war against Iran. The United States will participate in Israel's large-scale drill simulating a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities as part of the broader Chariots of Fire exercise later this month, Channel 13 reported on Tuesday evening. According to the unsourced report, the U.S. Air Force will serve as a complementary force with refueling planes drilling with Israeli fighter jets as they simulate entering Iranian territory and carrying out repeated strikes. The unprecedented Israel-U.S. aerial collaboration in a drill simulating a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities is seen as a potential message to Iran amid long-stalled negotiations in Vienna over a return to the 2015 nuclear deal, a possibility Israel has repeatedly voiced its objection to, warning it would lead to a more violent, more volatile Middle East. Large numbers of Israeli fighter jets, dozens, according to Khan TV News, will take part in the simulated attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. The TV report noted that when Israel conducted a major drill for such an attack some 10 years ago, when it was widely reported to be on the point of striking Iran, the U.S. did not participate. Hey, but this is a first with the U.S. participating, because we're living in the last seconds of these last days, the last seconds of the rulership of these heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites, before the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven under the children of Israel, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. The Israeli military has taken steps throughout the past year to prepare a credible military threat against Tehran's nuclear facilities. The U.S. in turn has expressed reluctance to prepare for a military confrontation with Iran, but nonetheless said it would explore other options if talks in Vienna fail. Channel 13 defense reporter, or Heller, noted that by including the U.S. in the drill, the two countries are sending a message to Iran that the U.S. will support an Israeli offensive, even if its fighter jets do not actively participate. But hey, they're going to participate as well. All branches of the U.S. military are going to participate in this war against Iran. The Northern Army being removed far off into that land, barren and desolate. And as I've been saying throughout the video, it's going to play into the bigger battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, that war of Armageddon. So with this article, now I'm going to go to Joel chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, the heathen Gentiles, these Edomites, the so-called white people, the Ishmaelites, who are the so-called Arabs, the Moabites, or the so-called Chinese, the Elamites, or the so-called East Indians, etc., etc. Prepare war against Iran, World War III, War of Armageddon, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, nuclear war, because this war will go nuclear. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, such as the United States and Israel doing joint Air Force drills, simulating an attack on Iran. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen. The United States, the state of Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Turkey, these NATO nations, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, and those mighty ones are the death angels of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, holding back this great destruction, waiting to get the go-ahead to release it, which is mainly going to happen after the Charagma, the mark of the BEAST in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 to 18 is mandatorily implemented, and the mark of the BEAST is, of course, that RFID/NFC, MICROCHIPIMPLANT. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. And when you go up to the first couple of verses in this chapter, you'll see why Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is gathering these heathen nations down into that Middle Eastern region for this battle, to judge them for afflicting the apple of his eye, the children of Israel. And at the top of that list, as pursuant to Psalms chapter 83, are you Edomites? For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. And this day is very near in the valley of decision. Just by reading articles like that, hey, we're living in the last seconds of these last days before the end of this current age of the rulership of the heathen nations and the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven, where the children of Israel will rule for eternity. And for you U.S. military personnel that find yourself in that Middle Eastern region for this battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, you better come to terms with that being your final resting place. There's going to be a great slaughter of you U.S. military personnel down there. As it says back in verse 20 of Joel chapter 2, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he had done great things, stink from all those dead bodies. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope your sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.